mention the story of a father who every night when he put his daughter to bed, he said something about, you're special to me. Remember, keep your eye on your wedding day. Mm-hmm. I thought that was an interesting message from a father, and I'm sure it's at one point the girl ho-hummed, every time she heard this. But the fact is, in time, I think she came to appreciate it, which was your point in the book.
Exactly. I talked to a lot of teenagers, a lot of parents and professionals about sex education in kids and what we should say and what we shouldn't say. And inevitably, mothers and fathers are very, very hesitant to talk to their kids about sex, and rightfully so, because sexual activity and sex there's a natural protectiveness of modesty that we all have towards approaching the subject. So fathers tend to think, I don't know what to say, I'm too embarrassed to say anything. And my point in telling that story was, what you believe about your daughter and what you hope for your daughter and expect from her will come through, and that message will protect her hugely. You don't need to sit down and have the long, grueling discussions about the intricacies of sexual activity. What you need to convey to her is what you hope for and what you want for her. There's the power. There's the power. And just that dad coming into his daughter every night when she came home from college, just talking sitting on the edge of her bed, you know what, honey, your wedding night is special. She knew that her dad did not want her to be sexually active, and she listened to that, and it held her off till her wedding night.
One of the interesting bits of advice that you offer men, fathers, in your book, and I imagine in your practice, is teach her who God is. Mm-hmm. This is not a message that's necessarily parroted by the media. In fact, just the opposite is what we often hear. To let her make up her own mind. She has time. Don't impose your values on her. She'll come to her own decisions. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, the data shows that God is good for kids. The God of the Old Testament and the New Testament is good for kids. We have found over and over in the medical studies that girls who attend church regularly, who have a strong faith, a Christian faith, Judeo-Christian faith, and incidentally, over 80% of the kids in America say that they do have a Christian faith of some Protestant or Catholic background, that those girls who do have a faith are more likely to do better in school. They're less likely to be involved in drugs and alcohol. They're more successful at going on to college and so forth. And I think that this is very interesting because it really gives a solid foundation for girls, particularly if there's marital discord, there's a divorce in the family. God is a person who has a character that the girl can turn to say, here is the ultimate dad. Here is a dad, a loving father. And God is good for dads, because let's face it, even the greatest dad is going to make a lot of mistakes. But with a faith, he can go to his daughter and say, you know what, honey, I make a lot of mistakes, but let me show you who doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And that's who we can go to and talk to and pray. But faith is extremely anchoring for kids, and kids with a strong faith do better in life. I want to share with viewers, just to give you a sense of where this is on the ground, the reality that so many of these teens are facing. And this frightened the daylights out of me when I came across this. You have in your book, if present levels of sexual activity among kids continue, by the year 2025, 39% of all men and 49% of all women will treat positive for genital herpes. 3 out of 4 million teens in the U.S. contract a new STD every year. That's 10,000 a day. These are astounding figures and facts. Nearly 1 in 4 sexually active teens is living with an STD at this moment. When faced with that sort of data, and you also identify depression as another STD. What can a father do? What can he do if faced with the peer pressure, the pressure from the boyfriends and the media telling this girl, give up this precious part of yourself. It's what everybody's doing. The father holds the key to his daughter's sexuality and the decisions that she makes about when she's going to be sexually active and when she's not going to be sexually active. And I can't emphasize that enough. First and foremost, I believe that if a father could see himself through his daughter's eyes for just 10 minutes, his life would never be the same. Dad has to realize how much power he has in his daughter's life, whether he wants it or he doesn't. He's got to recognize that. Secondly, dads, particularly those over 35, those over 40 who grew up in the 70s and the 80s where the sexual revolution was just taking off and they think, well, you know, everything's really okay, need to know some numbers. 19 million Americans every year contract a new sexually transmitted disease, and over half are in our teenage kids. And teenagers only make up about 1/3 of the population in America. And that's really startling. The numbers go on. Sex for teenagers is very, very dangerous stuff. And I have a difficult time convincing parents of that. Kids are easy to convince because they know there's trouble out there. Numbers, like 1 out of 5 Americans test positive for genital herpes over the age of 12. There's danger out there. He opens his eyes. Then he's got to recognize that he is the power influence in his daughter's life about when she starts having sex or when she doesn't start having sex. Again, he's got to know what's out there, and then he's got to know that he can have the influence to encourage his daughter to wait. Delay, delay, delay. Meet the boyfriends. Shake their hands. Don't let your daughter disappear off in a car with a guy that you've never met. Hold her accountable and let any guy that comes to the door know that you are a very strong presence right behind your daughter, and that if anything happens to her, he is accountable to you. And that makes a daughter feel enormously loved. And
Meg, you also say that fathers should have a game plan about protecting their daughters, how to protect their daughters, particularly as they reach those teen years. Can you give us any tips? Can we share anything with the viewers?
Absolutely. From the time your kids are 2 or 3 or 4 years old on, let your kids know that you want to be the source of all good answers to whatever degree you can provide them. So to open that communication, that whatever peculiar things she may hear in school, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, that she doesn't quite understand, that she needs to feel free to come to you to ask answers and to ask questions, and that you will give her answers. That's pretty hard for a lot of dads. You particularly need to keep that going during the teen years. Secondly, don't hesitate as a daughter is hitting puberty to really watch what she's wearing. If you don't like what she's